Miss Fig was convicted of the murders of Caleb Fig, Patrick Fig, Sarah Fig, and Laura Fig, a tragedy that shattered a family beyond recognition. Their sudden deaths under mysterious circumstances initially appeared as a series of tragic accidents, but suspicion soon grew that something more sinister was at play. As the family struggled to cope with their profound loss, questions multiplied, prompting a relentless search for the truth. It would take years to uncover what truly happened, and when the full story emerged, it stunned everyone. Catholic Donovan was born on June 14, 1967, in Ball, a suburb east of Sydney, Australia. His parents, Kathleen and Thomas, an English dock worker nicknamed Tuffy, had a tumultuous past. Kathleen's childhood was marred by tragedy from an early age. On January 8, 1969, when Catholic was just 18 months old, a horrific event forever altered his life. Reports indicate that Kathleen attempted to leave their home, prompting Thomas to pursue her. An intense confrontation ensued, which quickly turned violent. Thomas attacked Kathleen's mother with a knife, delivering 24 fatal blows. Her body was left on a Sydney street, and despite an ambulance being called, she died at the scene. This tragedy left Kathleen motherless, and her father was arrested and sentenced to 15 years before being deported to Britain. Kathleen was placed in state care, initially living with relatives, but due to her violent behavior, temper tantrums, and frequent crying, she was soon removed. By age 3, psychiatric evaluations described Kathleen as disturbed, aggressive, and emotionally troubled. In September 1970, she was placed with a foster family, where she lived with an older brother and sister. However, her relationship with her foster mother was strained. The woman was cold and controlling, and as Kathleen grew older, their bond grew more distant, lacking affection. Socially isolated, Kathleen became a lonely child, preferring the company of boys over girls, which underscored her sense of alienation. At 15, she experienced her first love and formed a meaningful friendship with Tracy Chapman, who would remain a significant figure throughout her life. Meanwhile, Kathleen's relationship with her adoptive mother continued to decline, especially after the arrival of her first grandchild, which shifted attention away from her. Disheartened, Kathleen dropped out of school 6 months before her final exams. By the age of 18, her life took another turn when she met Craig Fulig at a nightclub. He was 5 years her senior, and their encounter marked the beginning of a new chapter. Craig and Kathleen married in 1988, with Kathleen adopting Craig's surname. They relocated to a suburb near Newcastle, where Kathleen worked as a waitress, while Craig was employed at a mining and cider company. Coming from a large family, Craig dreamed of having many children, and Kathleen, eager to start a family, had no difficulty conceiving. On the 1st of February, 1989, she gave birth to their son, Caleb. Yet the joy of new life was marred by tragedy. Caleb was born with a mild form of laryngomalacia, causing partial airway obstruction and feeding difficulties. Just 19 days later, Kathleen's worst fears materialized when she found her baby had died peacefully in his sleep, diagnosed with sudden infant death syndrome. The loss devastated the family, and their obituary mourned Caleb as joining his grandmother, who had passed away earlier. Despite their grief, Kathleen soon became pregnant again. On the 3rd of June, 1990, she gave birth to their second son, Patrick. His arrival brought renewed hope, prompting Craig to take 3 months off work to care for his wife and newborn. However, when Patrick was only 4 months old, Kathleen faced a terrifying moment. On October 18th, she discovered her baby not breathing after placing him in his crib. Craig performed CPR while summoning help, and Patrick was rushed to hospital. Miraculously, he survived but was left with severe brain damage, epilepsy, and cortical blindness. Despite surviving, Patrick's health continued to decline. On the 13th of February 1991, Kathleen called Craig at his workplace, hysterical and crying, to report that Patrick had stopped breathing again. This time, doctors confirmed the worst. Patrick had died from epileptic encephalopathy. Grief overwhelmed Kathleen, and rumors of infidelity from Craig added to her feelings of rejection, abandonment, and betrayal. Struggling with profound sorrow, Craig left his job and turned to selling cars, seeking solace in alcohol. After some time, the couple decided to start anew and moved to Thornton, a suburb in southern New South Wales. Kathleen found work at a baby clothing store, and although depression and anxiety persisted, she became pregnant once more. On the 14th of October 1992, she gave birth to their third child, a daughter named Sarah. Initially healthy, Sarah's early months were filled with love, but Kathleen's lingering fears and past tragedies cast a shadow over their bond, making her feel uncertain about her new daughter. As Sarah grew, her parents' affection seemed to stabilize their relationship. However, tragedy struck again when, at 10 months old, Sarah developed a respiratory infection and a fever. Between August 29th and 30th, 1993, Kathleen found her daughter lifeless in her crib. The cause of death was later attributed to sudden infant death syndrome. The grief was overwhelming for Kathleen, and Craig sank into a deep depression. Over time, their relationship deteriorated to its lowest point. Yet, eventually they reconciled and moved into a new home, seeking to rebuild their shattered lives. 6 years after Sarah's tragic death in the Ural region, Kathleen was hopeful for a new beginning. Determined to protect her next child, she sought expert advice to create a safe environment. On August 7, 1997, she gave birth to a daughter, Laura Elizabeth, whom Kathleen described as a perfect, beautiful baby, more so than Sarah. For nearly 19 months, the family appeared to be living the dream they had longed for. However, everything changed on February 27, 1999, when a frantic call to emergency services shattered their peace. Kathleen, sobbing uncontrollably, tearfully reported losing 3 children, leaving the operator in shock. It seemed as if tragedy was repeating itself. While waiting for help, Kathleen performed CPR, but by the time paramedics arrived, Laura had already died. She was alone with her mother at the time, and the circumstances of her death raised serious questions. The doctor who treated Laura noted a fever and heart inflammation the day before, but her age made natural causes unlikely. An autopsy confirmed these signs, prompting further investigation into possible infanticide. As authorities delved into the deaths of Kathleen's 3 children, a disturbing pattern emerged. The doctor involved expressed concerns to the police, prompting a deeper probe. Kathleen had been the only person present during each tragedy. Her personal journals, found by Craig, contained unsettling reflections on motherhood. One entry read that she only wanted Sarah to be quiet, and when she finally was, Kathleen felt relief. She admitted to being irritable and even cruel, sometimes leaving Sarah with others. She confessed to missing her children but also expressed no sadness about Laura's absence. These diaries, which Kathleen never expected to be discovered, became vital evidence for the prosecution. After reviewing her writings, the police shifted their investigation from accidental death to potential homicide. Over the course of 2 years, investigators secretly monitored Kathleen's household, interviewed friends and family, and scrutinized her case thoroughly. In April of 2001, she was arrested and charged with the murders of her 3 children, as well as the attempted murder of her 4th. During interrogation, her responses to her children's deaths appeared detached and cold. Experts from the UK and the US concluded that all 4 children had been suffocated, with Kathleen being the only person present at each incident. Confident in her innocence, Kathleen pleaded not guilty. Her trial, which commenced on August 25, 2003, attracted widespread media attention both in Australia and internationally. The case ignited a fierce debate over justice and motherhood, as prosecutors argued that the children's deaths were deliberate. The rapid sequence of events seemed unnatural, leading many to believe Kathleen had deliberately caused her children's deaths. Her diaries were pivotal in the prosecution's case, with several entries interpreted as evidence of her guilt. One of the most disturbing was a note from 1996, written after her first 3 children had died, in which Kathleen declared, "I am obviously my father's daughter." This chilling remark alluded to her father, who had ended her mother's life when Kathleen was a baby. Another entry revealed her profound frustration with motherhood. She confessed, "I feel like the worst mother in the world," expressing regret over her impatience and moments of cruelty. Kathleen described her older daughter, Laura, as beautiful, contrasting her with her more masculine sister, Sarah. She believed these differences were positive, convinced she could better manage Laura's crying episodes than she had with her late daughter, Sarah. On November 9, 1997, Kathleen wrote in a notebook decorated with a teddy bear about her struggles with her partner, Craig, particularly his alcohol issues. During one drunken confession, Craig admitted he was not truly happy and harbored insecurities about Kathleen's role as a mother. Kathleen noted that Craig had a morbid fear of Laura, which she found understandable, attributing the problem to her own perceived shortcomings rather than the children themselves. Among the most incriminating statements scrutinized later was her remark about Laura, where she said she had left with a little help. This phrase became a central point for the prosecution during her trial. Kathleen consistently maintained her innocence, insisting she had never harmed her children or taken their lives. She also rejected any responsibility on her husband's part. Despite the absence of early warning signs in her children, her defense argued that natural causes could explain their deaths, citing conditions like sudden infant death syndrome and myocarditis in Laura's case. Her lawyers portrayed her as a caring mother, emphasizing her concern for her children, as reflected in some journal entries. They contended that the prosecution's evidence, these journal excerpts, did not contain explicit admissions of guilt or clear proof of harm. Instead, they argued these writings were expressions of a grieving mother, overwhelmed by sorrow and guilt. The defense highlighted the lack of physical evidence indicating suffocation or injury. Forensic experts were divided over whether natural causes could have explained the children's deaths. Additionally, Investigators revealed that Kathleen had been recorded rehearsing her testimony around her house, even practicing the cries she might need to produce during her statement. Her adoptive sister also testified for the prosecution, claiming that Kathleen had the ability to look someone in the eye and lie convincingly. Witnesses described Kathleen as a caring mother. Yet, as the trial progressed, the media frenzy intensified with Craig's testimony, portraying her as a woman under relentless stress, prone to severe mood swings. He admitted that she had lost control with her children on several occasions and faced significant challenges in her motherhood journey. Social services records were also weaponized against her, highlighting her troubled past and history of trauma to cast doubt on her ability to be a good mother and to question her mental stability. Over the course of more than 7 weeks, the accumulating evidence increasingly pointed toward her guilt. Kathleen chose not to testify, instead allowing her journals to speak for her. On October 21, 2013, an Australian court sentenced her to 40 years in prison. The moment she heard the verdict, she collapsed, speechless, tears streaming down her face, and was swiftly led from the courtroom. Due to the severity of her crimes, she was initially placed in a segregated protective unit, where she faced harassment, threats, and physical assaults from other inmates, as crimes against children are considered among the most heinous. Over time, however, Kathleen took on work within the prison and became a protective figure for fellow inmates. Her legal team appealed her conviction, arguing that it was primarily based on circumstantial evidence, especially the diaries, which had been presented in incomplete form and taken out of context, making them susceptible to misinterpretation. They emphasized the absence of scientific proof supporting the allegations. In February of 2005, her sentence was reduced to 30 years, with 25 years to be served before parole eligibility. Throughout her imprisonment, Kathleen maintained her innocence. By 2010, a group of supporters, led by Tracy, initiated a petition demanding her release. Tracy not only provided ongoing emotional support, but also actively campaigned for her case, tirelessly working to keep her story in the public eye. In 2011, Emma, a professor from the University of British Columbia, became interested in Kathleen's case while researching her doctoral thesis. After analyzing the trial evidence and arguments, Emma concluded that Kathleen had been wrongly convicted. Her findings were published in a book titled Murder, Medicine, and Motherhood, in which she critiqued flaws within the Australian judicial system and argued that Kathleen's sentence was unjust, based on misleading medical evidence and distorted interpretations of her diaries. In 2013, Emma appeared on a major television program to present her conclusions, prompting Kathleen's legal team to commission a comprehensive review by renowned forensic pathologist Stephen Corner. His 121-page report examined the medical evidence from the trial and confirmed that the deaths of Caleb and Sarah were correctly classified as sudden infant death syndrome. Following Patrick's severe seizure and Laura's myocarditis, authorities found these medical issues a more convincing explanation for their deaths than suffocation, which was not supported by any evidence. In response, Kathleen's legal team enlisted a group of legal scholars and students to scrutinize the case thoroughly. By June of 2015, they submitted an official petition, including a forensic pathologist's report, to the Attorney General's office in Sydney, requesting a judicial review. In 2018, with unwavering support from Tracy, a documentary-style television series was produced, culminating in an exclusive interview with Kathleen. During this interview, conducted through multiple secretly recorded 6-minute phone calls from prison, Kathleen offered rare insights into her daily life, routines, and her existence behind bars. She also opened up about her former husband, Craig, the trial, her children, and the deep sorrow she felt over their deaths. Additionally, she explained the significance of the entries in her diary, providing a personal perspective on her thoughts and feelings. Kathleen admitted she often blamed herself, believing mothers should bear responsibility for their children's well-being. One of the most controversial diary entries, in which she mentioned that her daughter left with a little help, was clarified by Kathleen herself. She explained that she was referring to divine intervention, God or some higher power beyond her understanding at the time. She had never testified at her trial, fearing that her writings would be used against her. After spending 15 years in prison, she regretted not taking the stand to defend herself. Life behind bars had been far from easy. On one occasion, Kathleen was convicted of assaulting another inmate over a toaster, which was considered dangerous due to fire risk. Following this incident, she was transferred to another correctional facility, where she was beaten and left with bruises and cuts, as other inmates did not want her in their unit. Just 9 days after the Australian Stories program aired on the 22nd of August, 2018, the New South Wales Attorney General announced a judicial review of Kathleen's conviction to restore public confidence in the justice system. That same month, her legal team contacted Dr. Carola Garcia, a Spanish immunologist renowned for pioneering advanced techniques in genetic analysis aimed at identifying links to diseases. A year later, the investigation concluded with disappointing results. The senior judge assigned to review the case expressed a desire to rely solely on his own judgment and declined assistance from experts analyzing Kathleen's diaries. In a report published in July of 2019, the judge stated that no scientifically reasonable explanation for the children's deaths had been found, reaffirming her guilt. The judge dismissed the new evidence and claimed that Kathleen's explanations only reinforced her culpability. Kathleen's case was initially dismissed, prompting her lawyers to appeal to the New South Wales Court of Appeal. They argued that the presiding judge had overlooked the possibility that the children's deaths might have been natural. By that point, Kathleen had lost all hope, and the confirmation of her conviction plunged her into profound despair, feeling that any chance of redemption was forever gone. However, on March 4th of 2021, a glimmer of hope emerged when a petition from the Australian Academy of Sciences was circulated. Signed by over 100 distinguished scientists, including 2 Nobel laureates, the petition urged the Governor of New South Wales to pardon Kathleen and free her immediately. It presented scientific and medical evidence suggesting that the children's deaths resulted from a rare genetic mutation. Research conducted by a team of 27 scientists indicated that this mutation could cause arrhythmias and sudden cardiac death. The new evidence, including genetic testing, provided a compelling basis for her innocence. Analyses revealed that Sarah and Laura shared a genetic mutation linked to heart conditions and sudden death, while Caleb and Patrick carried rare gene variants associated with epileptic seizures. Until then, only about 134 cases of this potentially fatal heart disorder had been documented worldwide. This groundbreaking scientific research was published in a reputable journal by the European Society of Cardiology, and as a result, Kathleen's conviction was overturned. Her legal team also enlisted 7 experts, specialists in psychiatry, psychology, forensic science, and linguistics, to review Kathleen's diaries. All concluded that her journals contained no incriminating evidence. Instead, they depicted a mother overwhelmed by grief, stress, and depression, often feeling responsible for her children's deaths. One psychiatrist, after examining her diaries, stated that Kathleen had simply been a loving mother under extraordinary emotional strain. Nearly 2 years later, on June 14, 2023, Kathleen received a historic pardon from the Governor of New South Wales. After spending 20 years incarcerated, her case was re-examined, and doubts about her guilt were confirmed. The diary entries used as evidence against her were deemed unreliable, and all charges were dismissed. Following her release, Kathleen was sent to a farm in northern New South Wales, where she was reunited with her friend and advocate, Tracy. She expressed profound gratitude for the scientific and genetic discoveries that finally exonerated her. She also voiced hope that no other family would suffer as she had, enduring wrongful blame and despair. Despite her 2-decade imprisonment, Kathleen, now 55, felt immense happiness and gratitude. She had prayed daily for her name to be cleared and lamented that the justice system had been quick to condemn her without considering the possibility of sudden, natural child deaths. She felt grateful to those who had fought tirelessly on her behalf. However, the news of Kathleen's release was met with disapproval by her ex-husband, Craig, who dismissed the scientific evidence presented. He, through his legal team, requested a new trial, believing it was the only fair way to allow a jury to fairly evaluate the new evidence and decide Kathleen's guilt or innocence. Sadly, Craig never had the opportunity to pursue this appeal, as he unexpectedly died of a heart attack in March of 2024. For some time before his death, he had been battling a terminal illness that gradually compromised his health.